I almost sold my XRP stash yesterday, then 3 calendar dates smacked me in the face and changed my mind entirely. And here's a spoiler. If you blink between now and mid-June, you might miss the cheapest price that we'll see for a long time. So picture this. Monday morning coffee, charts glowing red, XRP bobbing around $2 like a kind of rubber duck in a tiny kind of bathtub. Now I'm kind of grumbling. Maybe I should just rotate into something maybe a little bit spicier. Then I zoom out and spot 3 monster-sized events all landing in the same week of June. Suddenly, it's kind of like seeing a huge wave rolling towards the beach while everyone else is still kind of building sandcastles. Now that wave could be the last easy ride before XRP rockets out of reach. So let me break down why my caffeine-fueled kind of panic turned into calm confidence, and why you might feel the same by the end of this story. Now, we've got an SEC decision that could shove XRP onto Wall Street's main stage. We've got a Federal Reserve meeting that could spray rocket fuel across the entire altcoin market, and developer summit where Ripple's team hints that they'll drop fresh tech that makes cross-chain swaps look as simple as sending an emoji. Now, all 3 land in June, practically on top of each other. And yeah, the stars lining up like that is rarer than a hardware wallet in my junk drawer. So the first date is tattooed on my mind, June 17th. Now that's the day that the US Securities and Exchange Commission could finally greenlight Franklin Templeton's spot XRP ETF. Now in plain English, that's a fancy index fund that holds real XRP and trades on the stock market, meaning that pension funds, grandma's retirement account, and basically anyone with a brokerage app can buy XRP without ever touching a crypto wallet. Now remember what happened when Bitcoin's ETF went live back in January of 2024? Well, Wall Street's money cannonballed into BTC and pushed it past $100,000 in weeks. Ethereum's ETF was a little quieter, a bit of a splash in mid-2024, but XRP isn't just Bitcoin but greener. It's actually the rails for cross-border payments, especially in those kind of send money home corridors where fees eat half a paycheck. Now, if the SEC says yes, every analyst that I follow, even the boring suits who never leave Bloomberg terminals, expect headlines like banks test XRP settlements in minutes, not days. Now, it's that kind of coverage that can send retail FOMO through the roof. Now, here's the spicy little twist. The SEC already blew past its original May window without saying a peep. Delays usually mean 2 things. Either they're hunting for last-minute kind of gotchas, or they're ironing out final details for approval. Now, I'm betting on door number 2 because rumor mill and, oh yeah, some well-placed tweets hints the kind of commission is bigger, has bigger kind of fish to fry than maybe blocking a token, that's kind of been wading through courts for years. Now, if that hammer drops positively on June 17th, $2 per XRP might actually look like finding a Tesla at the price of a toaster. But wait, the plot thickens. Now, on that kind of very same day, the Fed's Open Interest Committee meets. Now, what a coincidence, right? So picture Jerome Powell, coffee in hand, debating whether to finally cut interest rates after 2 years of telling us higher for longer. If they blink and slice even 25 basis points, risk assets will celebrate. It's kind of like champagne o'clock. Now, historically, when the Fed turns dovish, money flows out of stodgy kind of bonds and into anything with upside. So tech stocks, growth plays, and yes, the chaotic crypto playground. So altcoins with solid narratives usually outperform in that kind of liquidity surge because investors start hunting for the next 10x instead of stacking boring blue chips. Now, XRP has that kind of narrative baked in. It's the, hey, we're the bridge asset for global payments. We've fought the SEC and lived to tell the tale, and now an ETF might legitimize us. Now, if rates, of course, drop and an ETF drops in the same week, well, that's a 1-2 punch strong enough to knock your exchange app offline from volume. And speaking of exchanges here, here's a quick shameless plug. If you're still kind of hopping between platforms, check out Blowfin via the link that's in the description down below and start trading on what I honestly think is the best up-and-coming crypto exchange out there. It's got low fees, slick UI, and you don't get bombarded with random NFT mystery box promotions. All right, so let's get back to the story. So June, it isn't done just yet, because rewind 5 days earlier to June 10th in sunny Singapore. Well, hot and humid Singapore anyway, but you get me, right? Now that's the kind of kickoff for XRPL Apex, the yearly summit where Ripple devs, payment giants, and every coder with a kind of vending machine startup kind of gathers to talk shop. Now, the agenda already kind of leaks buzzwords hotter than a jalapeno latte. AI integrations, real-world asset tokenization, cross-chain interoperability, fresh DeFi modules. Basically, tools that could let you tokenize your house deed, swap it for Indonesian currency, and do it all on the fly. And maybe even pay your landlord before your coffee even cools. Now, and if even half of those demos land on the mainnet this quarter, well, sentiment will explode. So let's think back to late 2024 when rumors of a smart contract upgrade blasted XRP from 50 cents on election day to a blistering $3.39 by New Year's Eve. Now, momentum, plus concrete product launches is kind of like strapping on a rocket to a rocket. And so we've got 3 supercharged catalysts jam-packed into an 8-day window. Now that's why Uphold's head of research, this is Martin, he called current prices the last calm before the storm, and why their official account basically echoed June could be make or break. Now, Uphold isn't just some random meme page either, right? They literally see order flows from millions of US traders. And if their analysts are waving a giant neon sign that says, this might be your last cheap ticket, I pay attention. Still, I know what you might be thinking, right? We've been burned by the hype before. And remember, right, the great ETH will flip Bitcoin by Christmas prophecy of 2021. Well, that aged like unrefrigerated milk. Same here, right? Because that's kind of why I grabbed my notepad, yes, old school paper, and ran the numbers. Since XRP settled around $2 in February, it's kind of ping-ponged between that and $2.50, while Bitcoin saw new records and meme coins had their kind of silly season. Now, in other words, XRP has basically been asleep compared to everything else. Sideways chop is rather boring, but it compresses volatility like a coiled spring, and markets love symmetry. Big squeezes often kind of follow boring boredom. I also kind of looked at the order books across a handful of different exchanges and noticed something kind of sneaky. Every time the XRP dips towards $1.90, massive bids layer up like bricks. Somebody, or a lot of somebodies, wants size without moving the price. Now that kind of quiet accumulation usually kind of precedes, well, not so quiet breakouts. Combine that with June's triple catalyst, and you've got the recipe for your kind of favorite technical analysis guru might actually label something bullish megaphone pattern with extra chili. So here's a personal confession. I first bought XRP in 2017 because a podcast guest said bank coin, and I thought, sure, banks no money. So it kind of rode up and it crashed. I hodled and I cursed my stubbornness, and I swear the logo glared back at me every bear market like, still here, champ. And when the kind of SEC lawsuit news broke in 2020, my portfolio looked like it got run over by a truck, but I doubled down at 17 cents. Friends asked me why I didn't just dump and move on, and honestly, I believed the utility story even when it felt like believing in high school garage band could win a Grammy. Yet every kind of cool milestone, every partnership with a payment corridor in Asia or Africa, every pilot with a central bank, that was music to my ears. I even managed to scoop up more XRP at 30 cents on Binance. Now, the lawsuit resolution last year lifted the kind of boulder off of XRP's back, but as weird as it sounds, price kind of barely moved relative to the relief. And you might be asking why? Well, it's because smart money wanted ETFs, regulatory clarity in black and white, and proof that Ripple could actually keep shipping code that makes TradFi jealous. So June checks all three of those boxes. So let's zoom quickly into each catalyst's potential impact then, right? In kind of plain kid-friendly terms. ETF approvals, right? Imagine you're a kid who loves toy cars, but your parents refuse to buy from, shady street vendors. Now, an ETF is like Toys R Us stocking that car. Suddenly it's safe, regulated, and parents can throw money at it. Now, that's kind of what happens when Wall Street gets the green light. More buyers, bigger spotlight, higher demand. Then we have the Fed rate cuts. So think of the economy as a huge pizza party then, right? When rates drop, it's kind of like hosts saying more slices for everyone, no extra cost, right? And people kind of feel richer and spend easier. Assets with higher potential, like altcoins, get extra toppings. Then we have the XRPL Apex product drops. Now, if the ledger integrates AI that auto routes payments for cheapest fees in seconds, or if I can tokenize my coffee loyalty card and trade it for airline miles instantly, well, that's not just hype. That's utility that you can point at and say, look, grandma, I paid rent in 4 currencies. Press this button. Utility kind of drives adoption, and adoption, well, drives price. Stack those 3, and you've kind of got the crypto equivalent of Avengers assembling. You've got Iron Man ETFs, you've got Thor rate cuts, and you've got the Hulk developer tech smashing through resistance. But okay, says my cautious inner voice. What if one domino falls or fails even the wrong way? Well, and it's fair, right? Because the ETF could get delayed again. The Fed could hold rates and the summit could drop nothing burger announcements. Now, in that kind of doom scenario, XRP might wobble, maybe even dip back to $1.50, $1.75, scaring swing traders. Long term, though, those catalysts are, just deferred. They're not deleted. Regulators will eventually approve an XRP product because demand from institutional finance is snowballing. Cross-border fees are a $120 billion a year headache for kind of, at least I should say, ripe for disruption, right? And the Fed, they can't keep rates sky high forever, not without breaking something else. So you can cue banks kind of sweating there. And of course, Ripple's dev pipeline is public on GitHub. Features coming this year, they aren't imaginary. And here is another lens. It's risk reward, right? Downside from $2 might, at least to maybe $1.50 is a 25% haircut. The upside, if June nails all 3 catalysts, well, we've seen XRP kind of sprint 6x in just 2-month window, right? So 50 cents to $3.39 after the US election shock. So repeating that from $2, it puts us at around $12. That's a 500% climb. Now, as a gambler once told me in Vegas, or at least at a Vegas roulette table, when the upside is 5 chips and the downside is 1 chip, you kind of spin. Now, it's not financial advice, but you kind of see the calculus here. And speaking of calculus, or, okay, simply kind of, arithmetic, Liquidity does matter, right? When the Bitcoin ETF launched, daily inflows hit billions of dollars. The supply side could not keep up, so price popped. XRP's circulating supply is huge, yes, but it's also spread globally on both centralized exchanges and on-chain wallets that haven't budged in months. A sudden rush from pension funds and hedge fund quants could actually vacuum liquidity faster than you can tweet XRP army. And that's kind of exactly when breakout charts leave people behind. Now, before you FOMO market buy and upset your bank manager, remember to do your own research, DYOR. Dig into the ETF filing documents, read the Fed's kind of beige book, check Ripple's GitHub commits, and while you're researching, hop into our free crypto Discord server. There's a link chilling in the description down below. Now, we dissect filings line by line, and yes, we meme the Fed meeting with Powell as kind of DJ GIFs. The community kind of beats solo research every single time. Okay, so let me share one last anecdote. Back in late of 2024, when XRP blasted past $3, I was on a video call with my cousin who never touched crypto. She asks, "Is it too late?" I said, "Probably not forever, but maybe today." Now she shrugged, waited 2 months, and watched XRP drift back down to $2.50. She still hasn't bought. Waiting for the perfect entry often means missing the obvious setup. Now, June's triple catalyst, it feels like that obvious setup. Now, if it kind of plays out, buying after the fireworks is like joining a marathon at mile 24 and expecting a medal. Sure, you could still run, but the real reward went to those who lined up before the starter pistol. And so, here is what I am doing, right? I'm setting incremental buys between $1.90 and $2.10 because I'd rather be roughly right than precisely late. And I'm also kind of parking a little dry powder in case the Fed flips dovish and altcoins across the board start ripping. Nothing hurts more than being all in early and having no ammo left for the real move. And yes, I'm kind of staking a tiny moon bag on Blowfin's derivatives desk because nothing sharpens focus like a small leverage position, with tight stop losses, please. And of course, if I wake up on June 18th to headlines reading, SEC approves XRP ETF, Fed cuts rates, Ripple unveils AI payment rails, I'll probably be spilling my coffee. Jump, around like a kind of soccer fan in stoppage time. And then record a very loud victory lap video. Now, if the opposite happens, I'll shrug and I'll just keep stacking because fundamentals haven't gone anywhere. Either way, my conviction level is way higher today than it was yesterday, and it's all thanks to those 3 calendars, kind of squares, lighting up June like a firework show on a kind of a planning board. Quick recap in one breath, right? June 10 to 12th, right? XRPL Apex could unleash new tech. June 17th, SEC might okay a spot XRP ETF. June 17th to 18th, the Fed could cut interest rates. And that combo could yank XRP out of the $2 snooze and launch it into the stratosphere.